Hello, pilots, and welcome to episode 6 of the Ramjet Anvil Show. I'm Zolver Nelson Jr., the developer of All Hail a Spider God, Screw You Bear Dad, and Mazurka, A Ghost in Italy. Today I'm very happy to be joined by my colleagues at Ramjet Anvil working on Volo Airsport. Martin?
Yeah, that's me. I mostly just drink coffee to grow my game developer cred.
And Frank.
Hi, I'm a frequent guest on the Ramjet Anvil show, so I'm here today as well. I also happen to be programming a little bit.
That is very good to know. But another really great thing to know, instant segue, is that Ramjet Anvil has some really exciting things planned for the future of Volo Airsport. Particularly in the Pilotwing 64 stream that happened last week. If you missed that, it's archived on Twitch, and we'll be doing another stream hopefully this week. But we hinted at some developments that mean a great deal for the future of Volo Airsport and just the wider Volo landscape in general, increasingly bringing together this framework of flight and the fantasy of flight to our players. So Frank, you got something to say about that?
Yeah. So we integrated the parachute code that was previously that's still in a separate release into the actual Volo game. So allowing you to start from the familiar locations at the top of the mountain with a parachute. And what we quickly found out was, actually, this is designed for wingsuiting. The mountain, the courses, everything. So falling down the mountain with no speed at all is just not much fun. It also felt like we didn't do Volo justice to just put in the parachutes and then make you choose beforehand whether you want a wingsuit or parachute.
Just call it a day.
Yeah, it felt way too static. So Martijn and I, we started discussing the roles of the parachute that it can play in Volo Airsport. So how can it enhance the way we used to fly through the mountain with just a wingsuit? What would a few first good steps be, and what's the first version that we are actually releasing? And that overall, that's what we call the gameplay challenge. And then there's also the technological challenge. Can we build the tech for the gameplay we come up with? But also, how can we use the tech that is there to design new gameplay elements? So today we'll be talking about design of the parachutes in the actual Volo Airsport game and how the gameplay challenge and the technological challenge shape each other.
So the first big thing that I gained from that, at least, is that you're indeed bringing all the work that you've done on the Volo Parachute experimental release on itch.io that's free. You're bringing that into Volo Airsport proper. What's the technical challenge? Starting with the technical challenge, what's the technical challenge of basically mashing these two flight systems together to hopefully make something that's at least from the outside seemingly harmonious? Because I know on the game development side things can look like they're on fire and everything, but as long as it's okay for the player, then we have a little bit of wiggle room there.
So in terms of technical challenges, I think transitioning from wingsuit to parachute is one really major point to get that working properly, because you have to transfer things like, okay, I'm going at this angle, I have this speed and acceleration, and you have to translate that in terms of that the parachute can work with. So
Why do I have to do that though? That's, I think, that's where it starts. The parachute system, as we've built it, the flying, is not the system we use to do the wingsuit thing. They're the same physics engine, but the composition of all the parts is completely different. And we have this system now with the parachute where you have your entire character is just a capsule, right? But the character with the wingsuit simulation is a system of these little capsules linked. You want to do a translation smoothly from one to the other. And yeah, sometimes you have to go, how do I do that? Because one thing is much more complex than the other, yet how do I do a smooth transition between them? It's the kind of thing we're tackling now.
So basically you're doing this, what's the biggest challenge in that technical translation? Because of course you have to think about mass, speed, etc. But you talked about one system being more complicated than the other. How does that tie directly into the gameplay challenge?
Tackle it.
Yeah, so if we get that working, and of course that's the goal, all kinds of new gameplay elements, or possible gameplay elements, can be implemented. Like you could use the parachute to, and now I'm touching something that we're not actually gonna discuss that much because that's for another episode. But parachutes can allow for more discovery. Like a wingsuit, you're just falling down constantly. But if you can use the parachute to go up again, you can transfer into the parachute and go up again, generating lots of lifts. You can go to other areas,
and that gets into sort of the composability of your gameplay mechanics and the technical stuff that you've built to make the gameplay happen in the first place. Because we have all this wind and we have all this aerodynamics, but if all you can do with a parachute is just finish your wingsuit flight, just fly wingsuit first, deploy parachute, and then fly a tiny bit and then land, what kind of use are you getting out of the parachute? Is it really combining with the wingsuit well, or could it just have been an animation or a cutscene? And the parachute is much more than that.
And talking about the fantasy of flight that Volo Airsport is designed to offer, you also have some situations that are specifically... There's a lot of drama inherent in using a parachute, particularly if it's happening on the fly. You pull a parachute and it's, okay, did I pull it too early? Did I pull it too soon? Did I pull it too late? And am I going to just crash into the ground really hard anyway? There's a lot of just drama inherent in these systems, and it takes both the technical and the gameplay side to provide that complete picture.
There you get into a very interesting point. It's almost like we've spoken about this before.
We'll keep going back.
Yeah, you're completely right, though. It's the translation between the wingsuit system and the pilot system in the parachute right now is they're not the same. But if you're doing a front flip or a barrel roll, or there's a lot of wind around you with a lot of turbulence, you want to preserve that as you deploy your parachute and transition over say a second or so to now I'm flying with the parachute. And if the parachute just opens the same way every time, you get the same story every time and it's dull. But exactly like you said, if there's variance in this and the context of how you were flying your wingsuit and where and when you were flying your wingsuit, if that all matters to the way the parachute opens and the way you transition to it, then you have this nice continuity. And I think that the continuity is really important. We know it from physics as well, but there's no reason we can't use the same concept in gameplay mechanics. Just to add, it's different from, and we've talked about this internally to make the difference clear for us, but it's different from just spawning a parachute in place where you were. You could do it that way, and technically that's how we start, but then we go, well, how can we make this parachute that we just spawned more similar to what was happening before?
Basically preserving continuity of movement, speed, etc., so that it feels situational rather than, as you said, just a cutscene that you're seeing. Does that also mean that players can switch between the wingsuit mode and the parachute mode on the fly?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Even if you you can have an infinite amount of parachutes, at least that sounds interesting to me. Like you can use the parachute and then drop it and then go back to wingsuiting and then see, okay, well, maybe I should use another parachute. Okay.
And as Just Cause does this, Just Cause 3 especially does this, and it's just a good idea. Not everybody wants it, because sometimes you want to have some constraints there that go, well, what if I couldn't deploy my parachute all the time? That's interesting too, but that's not to say that you shouldn't allow it.
Maybe we should, in the continuity of things, also have situations where deploying just fails, like we talked about before. I mean, there are situations where deploying might be extremely difficult, near to impossible. And you get a sense of intuitive sense of, okay, I can use my parachute now or not.
To be honest, on the technical side, we already have a simulation that is very prone to going, it's broken, it doesn't fly. Yeah. So avoiding that will be harder than allowing it to happen, which I think is a good place to start from. Is if you have a system that always just works, it's really hard to make it appear like it's failing sometimes, and then the failure will seem arbitrary, and we'd have to solve it with going, oh, there's a failure case, play the failure animation. And then you just go, well, you just flipped a bit somewhere and now I'm in the failure state. That's not interesting, that's not fun story, that's not drama. That's physics and drama tied together, basically.
And as someone who played Volo Airsport myself and quite enjoyed it, my question is, in the Volo Parachute update, or the Volo Parachute experimental release, your character was a little capsule. And I actually was wondering what was the design, what was the mindset behind that design decision? Because as you said, if you're switching from one to another seamlessly, obviously, I mean, it makes more sense that you would have to do a live translation of different gameplay systems if you're reverting from the wingsuit model's quite detailed physics-based ragdoll flight model to this capsule, which is essentially the human being in stasis as they're flying around or attempting to activate this parachute.
It's an information modeling thing, and computers are like these finite devices. You can do some number crunching with them, but you can't do endless number crunching, or at least it would take endlessly long. So with something like a game physics simulation, you have to go, oh, well, this is important, I'm going to crunch the numbers on that, and you know what, this is not important, I bet I could do it with fewer numbers. So with the parachute system, like the shape of the parachute and the links between all the lines that you have and the harness and then the person in it, like that whole system is important, but the person in there individually kind of gets a little bit less important. Ideally, we'd just use exactly the same physics for the character that we also use in the wingsuit simulation for the parachute, but real-world constraints in terms of just how many numbers can we crunch in a second mean that it's probably better to say, in this case, just a capsule for the whole person or the whole character will do.
And actually that raises something really interesting because, I mean, having heard about that, you can sort of understand why in big AAA open world adventure games we often see these incredibly insane graphics glitches regarding the physics system. Is that because, at least from what I hear from you, Martijn, physics is just really, really hard?
Well, yes. This is a whole can of worms that we should open gradually.
Yes.
For now, I'll say that in game physics, we've been using mathematics that are sort of pre-Einsteinian. And that means you can do some things, everything that is described by the laws of Newton and such, and a bit of friction. It's really easy to write down in code, but it takes a lot of numbers to crunch. And that means that the more stuff you add to this simulation, the more numbers you have to crunch and the more unstable it gets. And then you start stretching that to whole worlds. You start putting whole worlds in there, and it sort of goes gone very easily. And designing stuff that, even though you're fitting entire worlds in there, still is stable on a single computer and it just runs. That's a hard science. It's as much an art as a science, really, because like I said, you have to decide what is important to me, how can I fit it in. That's a choice.
Working on Screw You Bear Dad really showed me how reactivity is perhaps the hardest thing to do in games, because you're directly translating player action and reaction to the state of the game's world and its characters. in my case, world and characters, because I was making a narrative-focused title. But that's just really hard to do because players, you want to give them a lot of space to basically be free, but at the same time, that adds more and more work on your side. So I really kind of admire the technical challenge involved in figuring out just the basic way of dealing with. We have 2 different flight systems, 2 different ways of handling even the player character model. How do we allow players to transition between these instantly, at will, so that they can really have that full Volo flight experience? And my question is, how do you then take all these technical challenges, which are really interesting to talk about, and then translate them into interesting gameplay decisions? Because you mentioned earlier discoverability, but how do you make that entire thing possible? You mentioned something about a wind system.
Yeah, so the wind system is actually a technical asset that we can use to make discoverability possible, to make that gameplay element interesting.
So technical and gameplay are directly tied at every step of this process.
Yes.
Yeah, if you have tech that's not delivering any interesting gameplay, you could wonder why it's in there. And the other way around as well. I mean, if you have gameplay that's not supported by good tech, then the gameplay is probably not going to be the best it could be. So anyway, the wind system. Let's imagine you have a slope and the wind is going up there. If we can visualize that and use that in a simulation, we can allow the parachute to catch the wind and then go over a slope where previously with the wingsuit you were not able to.
Yeah.
So basically you have a situation where there's a mountain and then you're basically directly flying. You can basically use that wind, the friction, the lift to fly over it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But suddenly you have this technical challenge that says, I have some things that can fly in wind and crash into terrain, and I have some terrain with some shape. It's a lot of data. And then you say, I have a wind system that ties all of this together, and the wind kind of has to follow the contours of the terrain, but also have a mind of its own, but not take infinitely many numbers to crunch in a second, because that means it doesn't run. But if you can find a technical solution that kind of adheres to these constraints and does it in real time in a way that the game doesn't become much more expensive to run and just does its thing, then all of a sudden you found a technical solution for tying together all these gameplay things that individually weren't really working well, but now can all just mingle. And yeah, I think that's a really good demonstration of where technological design and gameplay design just fuse if you do it well. We still have to do it well, but it feels like there are solutions there that we really ought to be looking for.
So to sort of bring this all together, you have the gameplay and technical challenges basically being one and the same because they are always affecting each other. And I've noticed this in my own development work as well. The Volo experimental parachute release that you did wasn't just you going off and doing another project for some time. It directly tied into the larger framework of Volo Airsport. So really, as you're fusing these systems together, hopefully bringing them to players as soon as possible, what does this change? And fundamentally, this first step, combining these projects, what does it mean for the wider Volo Airsport world?
Lots of things, I guess. To me, at least, it allows me to look at the game more as a playground as we first envisioned it. We can, as a player, you get much more to choose from. You have a wider vocabulary to speak with the mountain. That's, I guess, what we're aiming for.
Yeah, you get this really, if we do this right, you get this really beautifully coherent gameplay system in which all the different parts that were previously sort of already there, just, you can play with them. Just orders of magnitudes more than you could before. And at the same time, on a technical level, pulling all these things together really helps us focus on, well, what is the kind of code that we should be writing that also really helps tie this together? So on the one end, we're always prototyping, going, can we do parachutes? Can we do wind simulation? Can we do, I don't know, sound synthesis live for wind sounds? Or whatever you have it. And you need to try it. And then it helps if you can just try it in isolation without all the other stuff there to slow you down. Then eventually you have to start pooling it together. If you just... The first step for us right now is saying, well, the parachutes, the wingsuits, duct tape. Are we done? No. But suddenly we know, well, there's friction here because this part of the physics is similar to this part of the physics, but they don't go together. Why is that? And then we have a concrete technical problem to solve. So these things really help guide each other.
So Volo is growing.
Yes.
And this is only the first step.
Well, it also feels like step 10,001 at the very least. I mean, there have been other steps, let me tell you.
As we discussed in last week's episode, or week before last, episode 5.
Yeah.
I think with that,
I agree.
We've kind of tied it up together nicely. With that, we could say thank you so much for watching, pilots, and until next time. Volo Airsport is available on Steam and itch.io right now. The link is in the video description. You can also download the Parachute experimental release on itch.io. That link is in the description too.
And to stay up to date on episodes like this, if you enjoyed this, you can comment, you can like and subscribe, we're doing an episode weekly, so we won't fill your inbox too much, hopefully.
We definitely will. Until next time.
All right. See you.